Hello, good evening. It's Joyful Hermit, and I am sort of going through sections of Lent, and I wanted to mention a little more of the situation in the one parish where also the people had turned on me. It was back when I was wearing the gray jumper. I don't think that helped any. And I was very good friends with this young priest because early on, after I had just moved to the area and joined that parish, the Lord showed me. It was an assignment for this young man and for the people there, but I never spoke of it for 2 years other than to the elderly priest who I had always shared everything with. And due to the circumstances of other people had written to the diocese about me, and they had me confused with someone else. It's sort of a humorous story, sardonic perhaps. The time was not good to report, plus I kept praying and was there and talking with this young man, and he wanted to change, he said, but it was a most difficult situation. And in the end, of course, he didn't, and he couldn't. He chose not. Too much to overcome, I think. So, anyway, but prior to my being shown, I was in the chapel there one night. And it wasn't Lent, it was summer. I was there praying before the tabernacle, and it was another odd circumstance that I had moved to this area, but yet I had to move 2 more times because of rentals I was in. The landlords had lied about different things with the rental. In one case, it had a lot of smoke that she said would just air out. Well, I found out later, no, that the previous owner was a heavy smoker, and I was willing to live with it, I guess, but I developed a terrible progressive smoking allergy, and my doctor said, no, I had to get out. I had to get out. And then another rental, the landlord lied, and a dog had urinated heavily in it, and she would not have it replaced. So the carpeting. So anyway, it was as if I had forces against me. And then finally another priest in another parish said he would rent me the house right beside the parish that was open, available. And because I had no place to live, I lived out of my car for about a week or 10 days, waiting until I could get moved into yet another place. And at the same time, I was taking care of my elderly mother. I wasn't specifically taking care of her, but she wanted me to visit her daily at a nursing home. And I had to watch over what was going on there and be an advocate for her, because that's a reality of many nursing homes. My mother was pretty much chair and then bedfast, and if someone's not there, a lot of times they don't get the care. So it was a very trying time, and as I said, right before I knew exactly what the real problem was that this young priest was dealing with in his life, a terrible disorder, I was in that chapel one night. He had said I could just spend the night there until I had a place to live. I didn't know people up in this area, and didn't have my house anymore. I'd sold my house in the other town. So I didn't want anyone to know what was going on, because in my life these things are unusual and most people do not grasp it or would understand. I hadn't really told my sister, still haven't, anything about my spiritual life, and didn't for years and years. So I think one daughter knew pretty much what was going on. So I was at this chapel that night in this parish, praying, was just there, going to spend the night in this all-night chapel that was right off the sanctuary, and it was around midnight. And with my back, I was on my back in front of the tabernacle with my knees up. That's how I have to be a lot of the times. Right now I'm slouched with my legs up, taking weight off the low back. I was praying, and all of a sudden, it was what would be called a corporeal vision, because they were actual, touchable, but yet a vision and not actual, as far as not in the temporal. But these young adolescent boys came in, and they were naked. And they sat around me with their naked rear ends up against me. They lined me, 3 on each side and 1 on each end, till I could not move. And it was horrifying, sickening. And later, of course, I knew. I mean, they were devils. And I knew, though, the significance of them being adolescent boys and naked. But at the time, I mean, it was just horrifying. It was all I could do just to cope. And didn't know, of course, what was going to happen next. I was there alone. Of course, I was locked in. You know, it was locked. And then these boys disappeared at the same instant that this large man, an angel, stood above me, and he had a long spear. And he stood, my head was on the ground, he stood off to would have been to the left of my head. He stood above me with this spear, and he said in a very firm and loud voice, I mean, very solid voice, "Love to suffer and suffer to love." And with that, he thrust the spear down into my heart. And my heart burned, but yet it also started to fill in with solidity and strength. And the angel had disappeared. He disappeared after he thrust the spear into my heart. And I never told anyone about that until this recent spiritual director, who, of course, you know, that was in the summer. About 2 weeks later, I confronted this young priest, and he told me everything. And from then on, for about 2 years, he wanted me to stay to help him, and I wanted to help him. I thought through prayer and through also getting him very much into reading and practicing some of the ways of St. John Vianney. And he tried, but as I said in the last post, off and on, he would then go off and off kilter, and I would be there again to say, you're slipping, get back on. Plus, at the same time, keeping an eye on things, and then about 2 years later, he wanted me out of there. He did not defend me against the people. Other cruel things had happened, that he was most cruel to me in many ways. But I hung in. I had promised his real presence that I would do whatever I could do in that situation. And I had reason to believe, and so did the old priest, that I would not be believed if I went right then and reported some of these things. But then, as I had mentioned in the past post, Lent came, I was out of that parish, and things were heating up. I was shown what was going on, and that he was going to start acting out on some things, and was also using this young woman sort of as a foil. And so I had to encourage her to get out of there, and she did. Eventually I had to tell her, which upset her horribly. Ironically, she wept after I had reported and everything, and they believed me. And they talked with the priest, and he admitted and also said, oh, that I had known through supernatural means about him. So that cleared up some of that I would be believable. Um, but anyway, it was an amazing thing. Then my recent spiritual director, he saw this young woman, and she fell into tears, and within 2 days he had her in to talk to him. And I was, of course, a mess. I had had all these other experiences, more that I'm not mentioning here, but just even that one was enough. And of course, at other times, I would be taken in spirit at night and be shown what he was doing. That was when he would sense me behind him. And I didn't, I had no control over this. It was all the Lord. And it was horrible for me. And at the same time, I went through the final days and suffering and upset of my mother and then her death. And then shortly after this being kicked out of that parish, it's a very trying time period for me. And I'm thinking even now, how my neck injured and my shoulder last fall, and not a word, not any consolation for the old lady here from the temporal folks. But wow, his real presence comes through, and what more can we want? And you just sort of have to laugh at some of these things and clear them out. Even later, this past fall, I think I finally shared that angel and what he said to me, and how, for the first time, other than here, about those adolescents and all crowding me in, not allowing me to move, and I had no idea what was going to happen. It was horrifying. So, love to suffer and suffer to love. I know that was, I'm pretty sure, St. Michael. And my heart had already been wounded back in 1995. Another story, but it wasn't in any way, shape, or form like that. And I knew later, as I can look back on these situations, I realized that he was preparing me for what was to come, for the suffering to come, the heartbreak. I felt tremendous heartbreak when I found out what this young man's problems were, and the stress of it all, and the concern for the parish, and then remaining there even though people were mistreating me. And other, this young woman was very nice to me in her own way. And she saw and felt sorry, but no one really would speak up on my behalf, ever. And I know that that is how his real presence has wanted it, even now. And God provides. He provides. And this is a journey. This is part of my mission and part of the cross that I am to bear. But I have many, many incidences like these of horrible demonic things, of ill treatment and being misunderstood. And then, of course, I've had times where I have been upset by it and have had thoughts, or horrible thoughts, or upsetting thoughts of myself, guilt, felt terrible guilt later about that situation at that parish, that I should have done something sooner. But there again, even the old priest said they wouldn't believe me. And even as it was, when I did report, I was grilled and grilled and grilled. And I don't think it was really until the young priest admitted it all and validated me that it was believed in. God bless His real presence in you, and may this be washed out of me now, so that I may move forward without at least those memories.